Hello and welcome to lesson 5. So we have done loads of different things over this term, everything from drawing landscapes. We've looked at charcoal drawing and subtractive technique, and recently we have been doing sort of more of a mixed media technique, looking at the work of Ian Murphy. So we've been creating like different backgrounds that you can work over the top of as well. Now we've done quite a few different drawings, or we've been doing quite a few drawings, and today what I wanted to do is give everybody a chance to consolidate, finish off, and maybe even if you have done everything, an extra piece, so you can really get to grips with some of the techniques that we've been learning. So last week we've used different materials to create a background. So the background has a layer of PVA on it, followed by some newsprint over the top of that if you wanted to, and then I got some tissue paper and screwed it up and then unscrewed it and flattened it out over the wet PVA. Before then, doing things like adding some very watered down Indian ink and letting the Indian ink and the water settle into those wrinkles of the tissue paper and so forth. You could also use some charcoal as well to do a similar sort of effect, obviously by using the dust of charcoal, or just rubbing some over the surface as well. So there's kind of lots of different ways that you can use this. So the reduction technique involves putting charcoal down, or anything like that really, like graphite, and you can then use a hard rubber or a rubber pencil, which I use, but you can also do that on the tissue paper too. So today I'm going to give you the chance to carry on with that. I have got you some extra photographs which you probably saw on the drive if you had a look over there. If you missed the lesson, I posted the video for you as well, so everything's there ready for you to go with. Now the next stage we're going to do is we're going to take all of this and we're going to be adding some color to the pictures, using this idea of the background and then building on top of it to create both the texture and all the interesting details, the perspective, the atmosphere within a picture. All right, so what I've done is created a background and added a little bit of extra gesso on so that I can create a drawing over the top, which I'm going to show you. All right, let's go over to the wall. So you remember some of these pictures from last lesson. So one of them, the one in the top corner there on the right hand side, is from Ian Murphy, and we watched a very short video of Ian Murphy actually creating the backgrounds in the way that we've all been doing. So that's very useful. Now, because you've got a background on here, the important thing to try and aim for is if you've got rocks and it's quite a rugged landscape like this one, and this is something that a few people have I've noticed needed to do more of, is make sure that you've got plenty of contrast on the details of things like rocks, as you can see in this picture from Ian Murphy. The rocks at the front are very contrasty, aren't they? So you've got really light areas on the surface there on the top where the light hits it, and then suddenly it gets quite dark as it goes down the sides of the rocks where there isn't so much light. And you'll also notice that it's much stronger detail here in the foreground, and then becomes much more textural and gritty actually in this picture as we go towards the back. And up at the bottom, at the back, right at the back there, we can see what looks like, and I don't know if this is the truth of it, but it looks like we've got kind of a charcoaly texture in there, and you can see, almost see some lines going across there. So that might suggest that Ian had a plan, Mr. Murphy had a plan to draw back into the landscape with his eraser as well, rubber. And then there's all these other little bits of texture that have come through as well. And here, look, we've got a bit of softness, which obscures some of the detail in the background too. So it gives us a sense of being further away and creating this sense of distance, which is atmospheric perspective. So a really interesting picture to look at. So if you get the chance, you know, spend a bit of time looking more closely at some of these things, because it does give you some ideas about how to go about your own stuff as well. And then of course we've got David Wishaw, who has used the newsprint combined with all of these details of rocks again. And you'll see once again we've got this really strong contrast that makes things pop out, particularly of course the waterfall and the rocks below the waterfall there, and a little bit softer next to the waterfall, but again there is still some lines and details that help create the jagged kind of edges of rocks and things like that. And then if we look at the back, and just to emphasize this idea, see how soft it is towards the back here. So even though it might be rocky, because it's further away, we want that sense of space and atmosphere. It does get really soft again, doesn't it? So very nice picture just there by that artist. And the other one, which I won't look at now, is Robert Dutton as well. Or go on then, I'll just zoom in quick. So again, we've got strong contrast on the rocks. And oh yeah, there was somebody doing this picture, copying it as an exercise. And you'll notice that we've got the river or the brook going off towards the background. So we've got this sense of perspective, things getting smaller as they go back. Strong detail in the foreground and contrast, and then softness towards the back. And these lines that have been drawn on the two hillsides coming down towards the river in the background really point the way and give a sense of kind of a lineal perspective that draws into the landscape as well. All right, okay, so I've put two more pictures on here to show you. Doink, there we go. So thinking about what we've been looking at and these high contrast ideas, we've got a couple of more pictures here. Now I didn't have a chance to check out the name of the artists, but this one's quite interesting. So we're talking about the next stage is using the techniques we've already developed and then adding in some paint, some colour paint with acrylics. So it becomes quite heavily textured, but also there's lots of layers of paint going back over the top of the drawing. Oh look, there's a name, M. Taylor, down there in the corner. But again, beautiful textures and really well observed layers of paint. You'll see as well in the foreground we've got this what looks like a wall with all the stones and things. Now as we go back, we've got much more softer textures and greys, so the tones get lighter and less saturated as we go towards the back, or the colors do anyway. And then this one I chose because it's got quite a bit of texture on it as well. So, and the interesting thing is you can really see it in this picture. So if we get, I mean it's a bit blurry because it's not a particularly big image, but here look, this could be where the gesso has been scratched into. So if you remember, gesso really holds its shape and everything. So there's a whole patch of gesso which goes right over that mountain in the background or hillside and into the sky, but it's been painted over. So this goes back to the idea that Ian Murphy creates these textures without too much of a plan, and then he'll paint his landscapes back directly on the top. Okay, right, so let's go over, I'll just show you a couple of the pictures I've got for you as well. Here we go. So I did that one there, which I called High Walk, but I've got us together some colour pictures that you might want to work from if you're ready to do that. But we'll be doing more on that after half term, so don't feel like you've got to rush straight into it or anything like that. Okay, I'm doing the one in the middle with the sunset and the sculptural form. But one thing to remember about images, photographs and things, is what's really good about them, these ones particularly, are that we've got strong details in the foreground and really soft, or we've got a sense of space with the softer details towards the back, so that the colour, the texture, the rocks, the shapes draw you in and carry you through the landscape into the background. Okay, right, so let's go and look at the desk. Here we go. So we started with the drawings. I just thought I'd show you these again. We've got our landscape here as well that we did with the paths. If you remember, we were using the side of the pencil to create texture, and then we were using an eraser to take details out as well. And then we did the charcoal, which involved putting a layer of charcoal down and then removing with a pencil rubber, which I got here. Although you don't need one of those, you can just use a bit of sharpened rubber. And then this was last week's work, so we'll get in a bit closer to that one, and then in a little bit you can see what I've got in line for us next. So there we go. So we've got quite a lot of layers of material going into here, but I started, if you remember, with the newsprint, the tissue, and then sanding it back once we'd put the ink on, of course, sanding it back. So we've got this nice, not smooth, but more even texture to work over with. Charcoal, which is what I've added up here. Gesso up here. Gesso for the highlights. And then I've used everything from pencil to charcoal to a drawing pen, a rollable pen on there as well. And I've done things like scratch back into the paint too. This might be worth just coming in even closer. So while the paint's wet, I've scratched into it. I've added multiple layers. One thing that I did do as well is, to begin with, it was very loose around here. In other words, it was I hadn't refined all of these hillsides and things, but I did that as I went along. So I saw small details in the rocks and stuff on the edge of the cliffs and added those in. I also changed the thickness or thinness of lines and that as well, to get the sense of the light coming over the surface a little bit. But one of the most enjoyable things about working in this way is taking your time and building up those layers. So what you've not got to do is get to a stage and think, well, this isn't working, and stop. Although sometimes you can, but the idea is to keep pushing through. So a few people have said to me at the other classes, oh, you know, it's not going right, it doesn't look right and things. But one of the things I picked up on particularly was adding more contrast and pushing and keeping going. What else can I say? Keeping going, adding the contrast and trying things out, because it is as much about experimentation as it is producing the perfect piece, because obviously you may not have tried some of these things before. All right, so before I show you that, here's a few of the different backgrounds. So you remember me doing this one. This is where I put, this is my background with the tissue paper on it, and where I've added charcoal and then rub back through it to create these marks. This one was similar, but I added ink to it. We did that together last week, and this has got gesso over the top. Okay, and a couple more. Newsprint, and with the newsprint here, I've literally lightened it up using a wash of gesso over the top. And yes, you can water down gesso and things as well. This one had ink on it, and I let the ink bleed. It's created almost something like a tree in the background. And then once you're ready, you can draw your landscape onto it. And I did this one just to explain how you then start to add your tones and shadows to turn it into an image. So we've got loads of gesso here, and we've got the mountain side obviously, and then so this is where it all starts, but then you don't stop there, you keep going. All right, okay, and so this is what I worked on yesterday, and I'm going to add colour to it today. So it's a little bit bright actually, as usual. It's overexposed. Right, I'll just move it to the sides. There we go. So this is the landscape you can see up there in the corner. I can grab hold of that. Oh, not that one. There, got it. So I'm working from this here, and as you can see, it's got lots of colour. It's a beautiful picture with this kind of sculptural rock formation in there as well that's been weathered over millennia or whatever. And what I've done here is I've used one of the backgrounds that I'd created. So it's got, and in this one actually, somebody mentioned earlier that, oh gosh, I didn't water down my ink enough. So for this, or actually, you know, it doesn't matter for any of it really, because unless you wanted that fine texture that was watered down, I actually I had quite dark ink on this background, but what I've done is I've added a few layers of gesso. Now, because it was quite dark, as the gesso dries, the dark colour comes through from underneath. So I added quite a few layers before I got to this stage, but I've then once that was done, I had something I could draw on a bit more clearly, and I've just literally used a pencil to draw the basic shapes on here, and then start to add highlights here with gesso paint again. So in actual fact, and if you've done these classes before, you'll know I've talked a bit about creating backgrounds or underpaintings, I should say. So this is almost now like a black and white underpainting that tells me where everything goes. It gives me an idea of where the tones and shadows are in this image, as well as some of the textures. So I can start working over the top of it. It should be really nice and good fun to do. Well, that's a bit better. Okay, so I'm going to be using acrylics directly on the top of this this evening. And I might find actually that some of the graphite pencil, because it's so soft, runs into some of the paint. But I'm going to let that happen and see how it works. If it doesn't work, I can do something else like put a glaze of varnish over it or something, but that's where we're at the moment. I will do a little bit more on painting as we go, but that'll be the next lesson. Today is about finishing off really, but if you want to get to this stage, then you could work on this, doing something like this evening, so you're ready to rock and roll. Okay, right, so has anyone got any questions? Yeah, questions. So in a minute you'll see I enhance the image a little bit. I just change the lighting on the camera and we get a little bit of a better picture on here. But it's really lovely to work onto a different surface sometimes. One that you've created is even better. And we're going to have a closer look at some of these ideas as we go into the next few lessons. We're going to use a bit of colour, we're going to create these backgrounds, and I'm going to show you a couple of paintings that I did in the past where I actually embedded things into the background, such as pressed flowers and things like that as well. So we should have quite a lot of fun over the next 5 weeks exploring these beautiful landscapes that we've been looking at and experimenting with some great techniques as well. So this was me just flicking through some of the pictures that are available on the drive, but most of these pictures I just grabbed from Pinterest for tonight's lesson, in order to, you know, give everybody something to work from, some inspiration and that. So I typed in rugged landscape, and I got all these sorts of things here. But you know, you can do various searches and you'll find some fantastic stuff, of course. So for the most part, I'm working with watered down paints, not to begin with. So nothing too thick or permanent or non-see-through, as you might say. And that's so that I can still see what's underneath, and then I can work back into that. In a few minutes, what I do is I start to add in some stronger tones into the shadows on the rock. I do actually overdo that a little bit, I think, but it still works pretty effectively. And in this picture, there's some absolutely beautiful colours, aren't there? Particularly those blues and pinks in the background, and then these lovely greens. So you know, the purples, the pinks and the blues all work together beautifully in this photograph. And then of course we've got the sunset as well. I don't quite finish the sunset tonight, but you'll see how it starts to come together as I'm working on it. So I've used here a mixture of blue and a brown from this this set of acrylic paints that I was given by one of my students actually, and I just thought, well, I'm going to use it. So these aren't the most expensive in the range, but they're Daler and Rowney paints, and they're a small set of the paints which aren't as thick, but work quite well for this because they have this transparency to them, so you can see back through to the backgrounds there. Now the useful thing for this, of course, is that we've got this wonderful sense of space and atmospheric perspective in this picture, picked out by that blue and those distant sort of purples, which are caused by the light of the sun dipping over the horizon there, way back in the background. So I had in mind here some of the pictures that we were looking at, and there are a few on the drive as well where there's very strong outlines and bold colours. So I had that in mind whilst I was working on this picture. So that's one reason why I went quite heavily with the shadows, particularly on the rocks and things like that. But then as we progress, I do kind of tone that down a little bit, not overly too much. And there we go, I'm doing it there because I thought, oh, it's kind of a bit bluey, and then I come back and I put some browns into it a little bit later. You'll notice as well that I'm using occasionally the back of my brush. There you go, there's a bit of blue and I've softened it with a cloth. I'm using the back of a brush to scrape lines or recessed areas into the surface of the painted areas as well. And another thing that I thought would be quite interesting is to just work on this area towards the back where the sculpture is. There's the paints, and leave some of the foreground just as a pencil drawing, because I kind of like the way that it leaves space for the imagination and draws you back into the background. So here I'm using a filbert brush to apply a very thin wash of this yellow. I've already got a gesso underneath here previously, so the paint will be soaked up to a degree. So you can see I've got two different yellows on there. I've got a warm yellow and a lighter yellow, and I've blended those out up into the sky. So I'm retaining some of that background that we created earlier. and then I'll come back in a little while and add some stronger oranges as well, and then towards the end there I add in the sunshine, the beautiful sunshine in the background as well. So here too, and I think you can see it in the photograph, we've got some white or bluey white to highlight the rock a little bit. There you go. So yeah, so I'm enhancing that rock. I've scratched into it as well, just drawing it out from the background slightly, which I really love doing, that sort of thing. You know, the positive and the negative shapes, you know, really draw it out a little bit more, don't they? There's a little bit of orange going into the background there. So I do mean to go back and highlight that bit further, but I didn't get around to it this evening. But you can see how wonderful it is to apply lots of layers, because it is fun to play around with these materials. And I'm only using paint here, but we've already used several materials underneath, haven't we? So it becomes, you know, a lovely experience to paint over something that you've created. So my feeling at the moment is it looks quite multicolored, which is fine, because you can tone down areas or highlight areas by using glazes of paint. So what I mean by a glaze is kind of like a wash. So you've got water and colour combined together in a very thin way that you can just put over the top. And indeed that's what I've done with those rocks. You'd have seen me just now adding some browny colour over the top of the rocks to create, you know, add some of that warmth that's in that rock as well. So with the sun here, this is literally a titanium white. Now I didn't use the set of colours for this, because the white in the cheaper sets are always quite transparent. So I get hold of a titanium white that I've got in the same brand, Daylit and Rowney, and I apply that on the top. We get this nice strong bold colour, or white. Now when that's dry, completely dry, I'll do another wash over the top to turn it from the white into that golden orangey yellow that you can see up there already. And the white will push through. Anyway, we'll do some more on this after half term. So have a fantastic week, everybody. Enjoy the sun, and I'll see you soon. I've gone, look. I'll see you soon. Bye bye.